Let's talk a little college football playoffs, NFL, Joe Burrow, Cincinnati Bengals. We'll get to all of that coming up here in a few moments, but we'll kick it off with college football playoff talk. Tennessee, Ohio State. Of course, we're looking forward to that one. A lot of big games this coming up weekend, but a lot of college football talk coming your way here. And a friend of the show now, Jason Fitz with Yahoo Sports, giving us some time as we kick it off. Jason, we appreciate you. Happy Thursday. Welcome.
Happy Thursday, brother. Always happy to hang out with you. I'm excited to talk a little ball.
Yeah, usually we just do this thing on radio. Now we get to kind of, visually do this thing. So I appreciate you, giving us time in the car, nonetheless. But hey, you were throwing out
usually at home, but it's chaotic time of the year. I haven't gotten back from the airport yet.
Where are you off to right now?
I just came back from Florida. So, this is back from Florida in time for the college football playoff coming up this weekend. And what will be the best weekend, I think, in college football history. Like, there's just, I say that, I know it's hyperbole, but man, when you have home playoff games, this thing is just going to be absolutely incredible. And watching Tennessee fans try to take over the stadium in Columbus, it's stunning. I'm not that stunned from my Tennessee background, but it could be a stunning look. Like, these are the things we're going to pay attention to suddenly, that, neutral site games. It's only going to be a reminder that we should do this every round of the playoffs. There should be no more bowl game in the middle of nowhere that nobody cares about from the site in the playoffs. All playoff games should be home and away playoff games moving forward.
Do you think, I don't feel like it will, just because all the money with the bowl games are invested in there. It makes sense to do it this way. I think we're going to see some great things this weekend. I'm with you. I want that all the way up through the national title game. But you don't think that'll ever be the case, right? No matter how successful and how great the atmospheres are for these first round games, you think that'll ever put the pressure to change that format moving forward?
No, but I do think we have to acknowledge the cash on hand is going to be a big difference. Like, I just heard the thoughts and prayers to the Southern schools. Let's also acknowledge the fact that if you're Columbus, you know what you're getting? An extra home game. Now, I covered the Nashville Predators through their Stanley Cup final run when I was on radio in Nashville at the time. And one of the incredible things about that run that I'd never really thought about was every single additional home playoff revenue, and that really made a difference to the team for the next several years and what they were capable of spending. Now think about NIL and what it's going to mean to have 100,000 people in a stadium. I don't care who's buying the tickets. If you're Columbus, you need those tickets sold, but also think about the massive amount of money that brings in. When you start talking about the bidding war to get a quarterback that's going to be real college football moving forward, a home playoff game is going to be super advantageous. I'd argue that the home playoff game is going to be advantageous to NIL for Penn State, for Ohio State, for years to come, as opposed to, a neutral site game that you get in the second round of the playoffs. So it's a big advantage in what they could spend next year.
I've talked to people at Ohio State that, we carry Ohio State football here in Dayton on our radio station, so we work closely with them, and they're not struggling to sell tickets by any means. Tennessee got their hands on, I think I saw 35 to 40% of the tickets that have been sold this far have been bought by, by fans of Tennessee at this point. But they said, hey, the stadium is going to be full, but tickets have not been flying off the shelves the way that they had anticipated. And that's not Ohio State, Columbus. That's not been the only report of that being the case. Are you surprised that as many schools have come out to say that, hey, we're kind of surprised that tickets are moving, but they're not being just taken off the shelves the first day they were available? Are you surprised by that at all? Or should we not be, since it's the holidays, it's cold, it's December, and a lot going on? Are you surprised by any of that?
No, but I think there's one other factor that we should acknowledge as part of the context here. Many of these college towns are just tough to get to. Like, if you're in the NFL and suddenly you have a playoff matchup against the Lions, you can fly to Detroit. Everybody flies to Detroit. Suddenly getting to Happy Valley, like, I've been to these places. They are a pain in the butt. The limited airline, like when I was when I was traveling with Game Day, with ESPN at the time, a lot of people don't believe it's real. It is. We didn't know where we were going until Sunday. And late Saturday night. Issue number one was, how the hell are we getting there? And I think we need to understand that that's going to be an issue for everybody in these college football playoffs. Like, if you're at SMU and you want to go to the game at Happy Valley, good luck finding flights, and then good luck finding hotel rooms. Part of the reason I think that Knoxville to Columbus, because Nashville, all of Tennessee is such a Tennessee state. You can drive there. If you want to, you can drive there. You don't have that advantage in some of these other places. So I think when you factor in the weather, the difficulty to get there, the limited flight options, the cost of doing it when you have a limited amount of time to make the preparation for that, and the holidays, and the fact that school isn't always in service in all of these places. Like, smartest thing Notre Dame did last year when they found out the schedule was they changed their academic calendar to extend finals to Friday. And usually they would would have been a week ago. But when they found out the college football playoff schedule a year ago, they changed their academic calendar to match it so the kids would still be on campus on Friday for the potential of a playoff game. I think we're going to see more schools have to do that. And then you're just going to have this realistic, it's tough to get there for a lot of these places.
Yeah, certainly a big problem so far, and we've seen it with the ticket sales. You mentioned how excited you are for the home playoff games. I am too. I think all college football fans are. Do you think some of these ticket sale problems could be used by the bowl games in the future, though, to try to pull these first-round games back away from the home stadiums? Just seeing these ticket prices fall through the floor over the last couple days certainly has me worried as someone who's really excited for these home games.
I think once we see the home games, everybody's going to realize that, as much as we love the stadium, this is also about the experience that gets people excited. I do not believe that a neutral site game would be as exciting to the average viewer as Indiana take it on Notre Dame at Notre Dame. Like, that's just going to hit different. So I think TV money is going to make up for this because the viewership's going to be through the roof over the course of the weekend. Hey, guys, I don't want to bury that either. Like, the fact is, I think we have a really good shot of getting at least 3, maybe 4 decisive wins here. I will say I think 3 blowouts. The only game that I think has even potential to be good is the Tennessee-Ohio State game, and that depends on what version of Tennessee we get in that matchup. It's not lost to me that the viewership's going to be through the roof. The TV money is going to be great, and the product might just be trash. Like, we could be looking at a lot of blowouts in the college football playoffs. So atmosphere is going to matter to keep people watching.
Looking at that Ohio State game, obviously Ohio State kind of matches up well with Tennessee based on what we've seen so far this year. It should be a game that leans Ohio State's way if everything goes their way. But could they be mentally defeated just after that Michigan loss and really not have their full ready to go for this first-round playoff matchup?
This is going to be a tough message for fans to hear. But I don't think there's mental fatigue and there's this carryover of losing the game to the players and the coaches that there is to the fans. I understand how important the game is, but if you're a player and you understand this, and look, I'll use an NFL analogy. I'm humble brag, I'm really good friends with Max Crosby. And one thing that I've learned from Max Crosby is that while I, as a Raiders fan, absolutely hate the Broncos and the Chiefs and the Chargers, Max loves a lot of those people that play on those teams. Every week really is one week. These things that we hear in the NFL, college fans don't want to hear. But, I mean, when you've got a picture of somebody with the Georgia tattoo announcing that they're going to Penn State in the transfer portal, I think we have to acknowledge that these players understand that what's ahead of them is a chance for a championship. So losing the game probably hurt for about 24 hours. And we'll hear all the right things about the game because that's how they sell it and that's how everybody's supposed to feel. You say the right things, but, man, even in the transfer portal, I think we're going to see more and more. There's going to be players that shift back and forth between some of these teams. So, no, I don't expect there's any mental fatigue because I think Ohio State understands that winning or losing the game will not be what defines their season. Winning in the playoffs will.
I certainly hope you're right there and they're able to bounce back. But because of exactly what you just said, Ryan Day's job is not on the chopping block just because he lost to Michigan. But if he were to lose in a somewhat embarrassing fashion to Tennessee in the first round, I know Ross Bjork has been pretty steadfast that Ryan Day will coach the Buckeyes next year. Do you think there's any outcome in this playoffs that could crack that door open for a new coach for the Buckeyes?
A blowout. If they absolutely got demoralized and embarrassed, I could see where that might change the tone. But, guys, I don't think so. I think this is a lot like Michigan. If he loses, remember, we were all sitting there saying Harbaugh's done until he won a natty. I think this is going to be the same thing for Ryan Day. I think what happens here is escalated pressure next year. I would argue that Ryan Day doesn't even have the most pressure of any coach in the playoffs. That's James Franklin, because Tennessee is at least a valued opponent. SMU isn't, and frankly, neither is Boise State. So even if Michigan turns around, even if Penn State turns around and wins in the first round and the second round, I could still see Penn State fans saying, yeah, but who'd you beat? You know what I mean? The pressure won't alleviate for Penn State. I think there's more pressure on Franklin to win than there is on Ryan Day. I think Ryan Day's back no matter what.
So, Jason, our producer, Casey, is very, very happy with you right now because we had this debate a while back about who's facing the most pressure. I agree. We brought up Penn State, we brought up James Franklin, but the counter to that was the fact that there's pressure, yes, in the eyes of us on the outside looking in, but I feel like there's a lot of Buckeye fans, or there's a lot of non-Buckeye fans that think it's crazy that many people think Ryan Day's job's on the line because they lost a regular season game against Michigan when really it's all about the national championship. But we all feel his job could be in jeopardy because of the pressure that we feel within the program with Ryan Day. Penn State, non-Penn State fans feel there's a lot of pressure on James Franklin because of the fact that he's known for not winning these big games. However, is there actually pressure on him if there's no pressure from the program itself? Like, what is the expectation for Penn State football? Because it appears to be you're not going to be Michigan, you're not going to be Ohio State. Now you may not be Oregon. Just be at least one of the top 4 programs on a year in, year out basis. Be competitive. James Franklin's has never been a guy that has won big games in the past. Why would all of a sudden now start to be what leads to him having pressure on him? From your perspective, why would that be?
I work a lot with Adam Brenneman on the College Football Power Hour, who played for Franklin and Penn State. And one thing he'll tell you is that for the last couple of years, the argument has been, yeah, but if this were a 12-team playoff, Penn State would still be, we're still one of the nation's elite, yada, yada, yada. They've been able to justify why the result hasn't necessarily been what they want with a yeah, but. That yeah, but is now gone in the college football playoff for a couple of reasons. One, they're in, obviously, but two, they got what most are viewing as the most favorable bracket, right? Like, they have a real opportunity. SMU is not really a threatening college football playoff team in the eyes of most, a team that many didn't think belonged in the college football playoff. And then they get a group of 5 out of that, a group of 5 that's, frankly, I think more one-dimensional than we're talking about. So they get what are perceived as, you have brand bias sometimes as a fan and as a program. You say, well, we're Penn State. We should be better than SMU. We should be better. Right? Ohio State taking on Tennessee. Let's remember that Tennessee was the top 5 team at one point this year. And Tennessee has played when they can get out of their own way like a national champion. So losing to Tennessee, there's no shame in that. Losing to SMU or Boise State, I think hits different for Penn State because you no longer can hide behind the, yeah, but if things were a little different, like now all of a sudden it's, hey, we didn't win our conference. Hey, we can't win in the playoffs. Like I do think it elevates for James Franklin in this situation.
Texas and Clemson. That's another interesting matchup right there. When we talk, like, my big thing about the 12-team playoff is when we knew we were going to see teams host, I didn't want to see 2 ACC teams going head-to-head or 2 Big Ten teams going head-to-head. I love these different matchups. So seeing Clemson have to go to Texas, I love that. Obviously, Tennessee at Columbus. Notre Dame, Indiana. I mean, Indiana is not the sexy brand, but that's a fun matchup right there as well based on the season that they've had. But this Texas-Clemson game, there's something off about Texas. I don't think that's a hot take. I think everyone shares that. But is what's off with Texas? Is it as simple as just Quinn Ewers? We were talking on yesterday's show. Can't recall a season where so many quarterbacks regressed. So many quarterbacks that had high NFL draft grades coming into a season where so many of them regressed at the same time. We've seen that with Carson Beck. We've seen that with Quinn Ewers. We've seen it with multiple guys. Quinn Ewers, what is going on with him, and is he the number one factor that is going to lead to Texas having success in this playoff or not?
Yes, he is. And look, he hasn't been the same since he was out with the shoulder injury. I just wouldn't be surprised, guys. I don't have any reporting on this. It's just watching it. I wouldn't be surprised if by the time this whole thing ends, we find out that Quinn's going in to get something cleaned up in that shoulder because he just hasn't looked the same since the injury. I think that also is going to lead to Quinn coming back next year, playing for someone. So I don't think it'll be Texas, but he'll play somewhere. So you're right about the regression. And the problem with the regression here is it's made you particularly one-dimensional if you're Texas. The only way Texas has been able to win is if they can run the football well because Quinn is not somebody they can rely on to win these games. Their defense has a bunch of grown men. I mean, they got adults on the defensive side of the ball that play really good football, but it doesn't matter if you can't generate points. For the sake of this game, though, I don't think that hurts. Clemson is not really a college football playoff team. This is the same Clemson team that just got shellacked by South Carolina, right? Like I think Texas is going to win this game handily, but I don't think that means that everything's fixed for Texas. When we saw it in the SEC championship game, when they cannot establish the run, they cannot throw their way out of it. So teams aren't even scared anymore of Quinn Ewers throwing the football. I'm a little surprised we didn't see Arch. I'm a little surprised we didn't make a change at some point because they need a little more athleticism behind the center right now. I'm surprised at the way Sark has approached the last month of this season. I think it's a liability for Texas, but they're beating a team in Clemson that stole a playoff bid that doesn't really belong there.
Everyone's focused on the playoffs, and rightfully so. It's the first round of the first 12 team. It's a big deal. But the transfer portal also happening right now, and we're seeing players on these playoff teams leaving their teams, some with moderate roles, like Bo Perbula at Penn State, their backup quarterback who played quite a considerable amount in their offense, now leaving to enter the portal. Is there any change coming to this portal window? Do you think it's as big as a problem as a lot of people are saying? And how can you even fix it with the way the academic calendar is set up right now?
So great point on the academic calendar that we need to remember. I don't think it's easily fixable.
Right.
I think it's a glaring issue, but I will defer to Mike Golick Sr., who I talked to about this the other day on Gojo's show. And one thing that Golick Sr. pointed out is how many players are in the transfer portal, and then how many of them are actually impacted. One thing we always talk about in the NFL when they say, "Why does the franchise tag still exist?" Well, the franchise tag only impacts 32 players. So are they going to negotiate thousands of players based on 32 different guys? No. Realistically, how many teams are truly impacted in a negative way by the transfer portal? 5, 6, maybe? Is that such a reason that you change the entire academic calendar for every college football program? I think the answer to that is no. I think this is just one of those things that stinks. Kind of like for me growing up in Vegas, I'm a UNLV fan. Did last night's bowl game matter? Like I'm looking at a UNLV team that looks nothing like UNLV did 2 weeks ago. Like, just like coaches in some of these programs are going to have situations where they have to walk away from the sidelines, so are some players. I think it's an unfortunate byproduct of the transfer portal. I think it should be changed. I don't think it impacts enough players and teams in such a real dramatic way that they actually push for change. So I think this is just an annual yelling and screaming that we'll all do, because at some point it's going to hurt a team. And then maybe if God forbid, we live in a situation where a quarterback gets hurt and suddenly the backup quarterback is no longer in action, now we're going to have an issue. But I don't think there's going to be enough problem to warrant a change, even though I do think it's a smart point that the academic calendar, like it would take true academic change for the sake of football across the college football landscape to change it. I don't think that's going to happen.